is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
What's up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden, and on today's show, I'm going to be going solo, but I've got a lot to discuss. I'm really excited to be talking with you all today, and as you can see with the thumbnail here on YouTube, or if you're watching on the audio side, you can kind of see there with the graphic, we're going to be talking about the top 5 free agents that I think the Pacers could look to go after with their taxpayer mid-level exception. So it's not the full taxpayer mid-level exception. They could do the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, but we're looking at players that kind of fit in that $6 million range. And if you are a fan of my written work, I've already released the written work on Wednesday morning. So if you already read this, I do apologize if it's a little bit of double dipping, but I'm going to go ahead and dive in a little bit deeper on why I said those 5 specific names. But before I get into all of that, I just want to say that Chad Buchanan had a very candid conversation with JMV on Tuesday afternoon. And we've already heard from Kevin Pritchard twice, in his post-NBA draft lottery media availability and when he was on the Pat McAfee show. But it was kind of shorter segments. And this was a 27-minute conversation that I highly recommend you guys check out between Chad and JMV. And so I'm just going to share some of it today, and I'm not actually going to play the audio like I did last time when I went solo, but I'm just going to read some of what Chad had to say. So I don't want to wait and kind of build this up any bigger than it needs to be, but for those that don't know, the NBA Draft Combine is going on in Chicago. That is where the NBA Draft Lottery took place on Sunday, and so now the Combine's this week. And the Pacers don't have a first or second round pick. And it's kind of like, why in the world are they still here? Well, it's a great opportunity to connect with executives, with agents, with potentially players if they're there. There's other GMs and league officials and things like that. So it makes a lot of sense. And look, the Pacers, who knows what's going to happen, but they could maybe get back into the first round, maybe acquire a second round pick. And so it's smart for them to still evaluate this draft, even if they don't have a pick right now. So let's get into what was said here. So, because I think JMV did a great job of saying, okay, without a draft pick, you're at the draft combine. What can you do to kind of retool this roster in the offseason? And here is what Chad Buchanan had to say. A big part of the pre-draft camp here in Chicago this week is meeting with agents and talking about interest in our team and fits with our team. I would say this. We're a very appealing destination with where we're at with this group. That's pretty interesting to me. How many times have we talked about the Pacers not being a free agent destination place, right? What teams want to go to the Pacers? I mean, they're a Midwest team, right? And before last season, nobody really viewed them as a potential championship contender. And then they go to Game 7, and okay, so wow, that's pretty crazy. Like, that's how quick things can turn. So Chad continued here. He said, the style of basketball that we play, as well as playing for Coach Carlisle, playing in Indiana, they've seen this team over the previous 2 years and the run that we made. There's a lot of interest from players and free agents to be a Pacer. This is what I would call the power of building a winning organization. When you construct a team that is capable of competing for a championship, players want to be a part of it. For example, we'll talk about him later in the episode. I mean, you guys probably already have an idea. Tim Hardaway Jr., he was making a pretty good amount of money before he went to the Denver Nuggets. And he signed for the veteran minimum to be a part of Denver's team because Denver is a team that on paper with Nikola Jokic, you feel like can make it to the NBA Finals almost every year. Like, this guy gives you a chance to do it. And the Western Conference is loaded with OKC and San Antonio. I think a lot of players that might be looking to try to get to the NBA Finals and win their first championship, they might see a clearer path through the Eastern Conference. And if you're watching the East this season in the playoffs, it has been incredibly underwhelming. So I will just say this, for Pacer fans that are down in the dumps about what's gone on with the trade and going to the Clippers at pick 5, I think you have to be optimistic about where the East is currently at. Now, trades could be done in the offseason to make this East better, but you have a core that's won together, played together, and they have a chip on their shoulder, and they have a lot of motivation to get back there. So I think that's really important. Now, what I really liked was hearing JMV question Chad Buchanan, because I wanted to hear what he had to say too about this. I'm talking about all these free agents, but right now the Pacers are sitting dead smack even pretty much with where the luxury tax line is, and they might be just slightly a bit over. So I thought it was interesting that JMV was like, okay, it's been 21 years since you guys, paid the luxury tax. You got to go all the way back to 2005, 2006. What is it? Are you guys willing to do it? Is this the team that you're willing to pay the luxury tax for? And he even talked about maybe the aprons and things like that. So here's what Chad had to say. Our ownership wants to compete for a championship. That's something we have discussions about all the time. And if the right player and the right contract, I think Herb and Steve Simon, the family wants to win a championship for all of our fans and this community. We're going to be aggressive, but it's got to be the right decision for the long-term health of our team. Okay. So what did he say there? A lot of nothing, to be honest with you. That's how I kind of took it. It sounds like they want to win. They want to compete for a championship. We know that. They have discussions about players all the time, something about winning the championship all the time. Okay, that's nothing. Okay. If it's the right player and the right contract, I think they might be willing to do it. But we don't want to run the long-term health of the team. So they're not talking about actual health. They're talking about financial health and ways to improve the roster. So I don't think he said a whole lot there. And then JMV kind of continued to push a little bit to see if we could get a little more out of him. So he said, Chad Buchanan added a little bit more context to this. And he said, we don't want to do something that limits us moving forward, but we also want to make the moves that put us in contention to compete for a championship. Okay, that sounds a little better to me. It sounds like, okay, maybe we can make a risk for this season, but not something that's going to jeopardize our future. But we still want to make the moves around the edges or make the moves necessary to win a championship. So, this wasn't the only thing that Chad had to say. He continued talking here about this because I think it's really important that fans understand where this team is at when it comes to going all the way into that threshold of the first apron and even potentially the second apron. So here's what Chad had to say about becoming a luxury tax team and then what a first and second apron penalty could look like. So he said, I think that it's a very real possibility, and this is about going into the luxury tax. There's a lot of different moves that can be made this offseason, whether it be trades or free agency. The impact where we're at relative to the luxury tax, and then the first apron and the second apron above that, you want to be smart in the sense to not hamstring yourself by going into these aprons. These aprons can be very restrictive on how you build your team, so we've got to be conscious of that. Okay, that right there to me screams the Pacers will not be a first apron team. Okay? So that means they will go up potentially to the first apron, but they will make sure they do not go into the first apron because of the restrictive rules that it puts on your team. I mean, the second apron is like beyond belief. Like it's a very hard thing to maneuver with. The first apron, there's a little wiggle room, but not much. But if you can just stay right under that threshold of the first apron, it does give you more flexibility. And I think that is what the Pacers are going to do, at least in the offseason. So right now, that would give them roughly $8 million to spend. That's not a lot of money. And that's only in free agency that you'd have to spend $8 million of what would have to be some type of mid-level exception. It could be a non-taxpayer if you cut somebody. It could be a taxpayer mid-level exception if you don't cut anybody, but you'd only be able to use about $6 million of that $8 million. So there are some options there. They could also make trades. If they wanted to make a trade and get rid of some salary and trade it into somebody else's salary cap and then give themselves more room, okay, then they could maybe go out there and get a bigger fish. That maybe makes more sense to help them win a championship. Now, Chad continued. He said, Mr. Simon and all of our front office, we want to be aggressive and try to put this team in the best position to win a championship. Spending smartly and spending wisely will be a part of that, but we realize where we're at with our timeline. Okay. I love the transparency here. I think at the beginning he was kind of working his way into saying what he wanted to say. And when J&B pushed a little bit, I think you got the answer that you wanted. They understand the window. This is a championship level team. This is the championship window that a lot of people are pinning on the next 2 years because of how contracts align. The Pacers can't be cheap. And that is one thing, that they have been for the last, really, the majority of their existence in the NBA, but we'll just say the last 21 years, the last 2 decades, they've avoided the tax. They've had teams that could have won a championship, potentially, if you go back to the early stages of the Brawl team and the Reggie Miller end of his career, right? That group right there, they could have won a championship. And it seems like right after that went down, they kind of stopped thinking about paying the tax. And then you go into the Paul George era. That team took LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh to a Game 7. And they were clearly not as talented in terms of overall players. So I just think that the Pacers finally feel like they're in a legit shot. They have a legit shot to win the NBA championship. And OKC is deep and San Antonio is deep. And you know why they're deep? Because they got incredibly lucky in the lottery and they made some great trades. Okay. Victor Wembanyama, the fact that you get him, you get Harper, and you also get Castle in this 3 drafts in a row, like that's just insane. It's luck. If you want to say the lottery's rigged, I'm not going to push back. I'm not saying it is, but like I've said before, the conspiracy theories are out there about, and then, you look at what OKC's done. Like they've got so many picks and they've been able to hit on them. And I think that, with Chad and then, of course, trading, all that stuff they got for SGA and then the piece they've added with Jalen Williams and Casey Wallace and then using a smaller contract to go get from Chicago, trading Josh Giddey, a lottery pick, for Alex Caruso, who's been like a perfect fit, Lou Dort, another player they targeted. So it's all about really building within, and you make some trades around the edges, but the Pacers are mostly built on trade. The starting 5 outside of Nembhard, it's all built on trade. You've got, a bench that's mostly built on, I would say trade and free agency. You signed TJ in free agency. You traded for Toppin, traded for J Huff. You drafted Jarris and Shep and Furphy. So you've got a nice mix, I guess you could say, but mostly you've built your core of your team through trade. And it doesn't really matter how you're built. I think that if the Pacers' best ability is to trade and target those players, then do that. And I think they have a great opportunity to do it as well. So I just love what Chad said. I'm really excited that this team is operating at least as a championship level team. And that is where the frustration, the confusion comes in with, why would you want to give up this pick for a player that's never been an all-star or a player that, is not a top 5 center in the NBA? Well, they feel like they can win a championship. And so that's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is not to be really good for 12 years. The ultimate goal is to win it all. And this team's never won it all in the NBA. So they want to win it all. And this is why they make this move. And their previous transactions, going out and getting Siakam, going out and getting Halliburton, trading for Nesmith, the trade that, got them Andrew Nembhard was through the Karis LeVert trade. So, that was still partially a trade to get them a draft pick. I'm just saying, they're aggressive when they need to be. And I think that anybody suggesting that the Pacers should make an all-in move and trade multiple pieces of this core to go out there and get somebody bigger, I don't see the Pacers doing that. And that's why on the previous episode that I did with Brad and Ryan Knight from Pacers Post Up, we talked about 3 smaller deals. And I know not everybody loved them, but a lot of people did like Brad's idea of Saddiq Bey. So all for it, man. Saddiq Bey is a good player. He mentioned Yves Missy in the trade. People are hit or miss on him. He's a center that doesn't score a lot of points. So I get why fans would be like, it's just a guy, but he's a good player. And I've got some pretty knowledgeable people that have told me this is a really nice center. So that's probably why I'm a little bit higher on him the most. And then, of course, I threw up Max Strus, people like that. They said it probably would never happen. And then, of course, everybody knew that Ryan's idea of Grayson Allen was not going to go over well with the fan base. And Ryan even said that, so I don't feel bad saying that. But it was smaller trades. But this is where the Pacers could potentially look at what OKC did and go out there and get somebody like an Alex Caruso to come on their roster and just fill a void that they have. So I don't know who that player is, but if they want to go the cheaper route and they want to go the taxpayer mid-level exception route, I've got 5 names in mind that I wrote about, and I'm going to talk about them here on the next segment. But let's go ahead and take a quick break. The first round of the playoffs is in the books, and the second round is finally here, and there is no better way to cash in on the high-flying hoops action than PrizePicks, a preferred partner of the NBA. Every bucket, every dime, and every win means more when you're playing on PrizePicks. So don't pass up your next shot with PrizePicks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. PrizePicks wants us to tell you about this new feature. On PrizePicks, you can play Pick Live Squares during the NBA playoffs, and you could win a trip for 2 to the NBA Finals. To enter, you just make a $5 lineup with at least one live NBA player pick during any part of the 2026 NBA playoffs. Live player picks are picks made after a game is already in progress. On PrizePicks, how you play, it's up to you. If you want flexibility, choose FlexPlay, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter your play, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code PACE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code PACE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, a preferred partner of the NBA. Alrighty, we are back, and we're going to dive into 5 free agents the Pacers could target here with their taxpayer mid-level exception, which is around $6 million. And we're going to go with number 5 here. This is a name that is very familiar to Pacer fans because he was once drafted by them. It is Aaron Holiday. He is an unrestricted free agent, and he is mostly known for being a point guard, but he can play the combo guard. But he's got 5.5 points per game, 1.1 assists, 1 rebound a game, 41.7% from the field. But this is where he's really good. 39.4% from 3, 85.4% from the free throw line, and he only plays 13.7 minutes per game. Okay. What I like about him is he's a Holiday number 1, and Holiday brothers always kind of stick around in the league. But he's 6'2" with a 6'7" wingspan, and we know he's extremely quick. But the 3-point shot's good, and he can defend, both guard positions. And the ability to defend both guard positions is big. But I think that when you look at the point guard problems the Pacers have had over the years, over the last couple of years, is like their third string point guard, kind of like trying to figure out who that should be. They're deep with TJ, Andrew, and Tyrese. Don't get me wrong. But I think just in case somebody gets hurt or 2 people get hurt, you want to have somebody that's a little bit more of a capable point guard to step in those kind of moments. And so this is why I went after Holiday, because he's still a part of this, age group here that fits in with this timeline pretty well. I like his style with this team. He's been, he's found a home in Houston the last couple of years. Ime Udoka really likes him, and Ime Udoka is known for his defense. So getting someone that can kind of be like a 3-and-D type of guard makes a lot of sense to me. He's number 5 on my list for a reason, because he's the least appealing to me. But I just think when you're looking at how can the Pacers upgrade their point guard spot, he makes a lot of sense. I would rather have Aaron Holiday than Quentin Jackson and Cam Jones, but it depends on how much it's going to cost me. So I don't think he should be paid more than the minimum. He is a minimum level player to me. If there's a team that wants to give him more than the minimum, then they can go ahead and have him, because I just think that'd be too much, especially with where the Pacers are at. So I wouldn't be wanting – here's what I'll say. If the Pacers could use their mid-level exception on somebody else and then just sign him as a minimum player, that is the route I would go, because I just don't think you want to waste any of your mid-level exception, if you don't have to, on a guy like Aaron Holiday, who had decent stats, but, still more of a third-string point guard that can potentially play some, but I do like the versatility that he can play some too. Now, the next player, I mentioned him earlier, Tim Hardaway Jr., he spent 3 seasons with Rick Carlisle, okay? He's played 160 games for Rick and started in 86 of them. He averaged 15.8 points per game on 39.8% shooting from three. His first full season with Rick, and then in his final season with Rick, he averaged 16.6 points per game, shooting 39.1% from three. Now, what was that, 6-7 years ago? So, of course, he's dropped off a little bit, but I still think he's a good player. Now, defensively, you ain't getting much, if anything. He's not a defensive-minded player at all. Offensively is where you're going to get a really nice boost off the bench. So we're talking about getting some bench scoring. This is a guy that can play the 2 or the 3, and I know people worry about he had beef with Halliburton, his dad had beef. Guys, come on. It's the NBA. We're not kids. These are grown adults. These are grown men. They can put their differences behind them and get together and play some basketball. I'm not worried about that. He's a very, very talented journeyman that has clearly been in the league because of his elite 3-point shooting and ability to score. I mean, what he did last year for Detroit, not this year, but last year for Detroit, and he was awesome in that first round series against the Knicks. Like, he's not afraid of the big moments, and I think that if you just kind of utilize him correctly, it does make a lot of sense. And I like that there's familiarity there already with Rick Carlisle, and I believe Jenny Busick was on the roster as well on that coaching staff. I know Mike Weiner was a part of that coaching staff, and so he knows, Tim Hardaway and what he brings to the table. But I think that there's obviously some appeal here for the Pacers and potentially Tim Hardaway Jr., knowing Rick Carlisle's system. And like I mentioned earlier in the first segment, Chad Buchanan said people want to play for Rick. If there's already a good relationship there with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Rick Carlisle, then it could make some sense. Now, at number 3, this is where I have a foe of the Pacers. This is where I have Gary Trent Jr. And we saw what Gary Trent Jr. did to the Pacers 2 years ago. 37 points in Game 3, the only game that the Bucks won in that series, and then 33 in Game 5. Almost hit the dagger. He was letting the crowd know about it, and then he dropped the ball between his legs, and the Pacers came down and got a chance to beat Giannis and the Bucks, and they did, thanks to Tyrese Halliburton, because it was one of his 4-game winners. And my, oh my, what a fun ride that was. But Gary Trent Jr., he is a guy that is an average defender, right? Not elite, but an average defender, but he can shoot the ball. And last year, obviously, a year from hell for the Bucks. I mean, you don't have Dame. He's out with the Achilles injury. You trade him, or actually you cut and waive and stretch him, which is the dumbest thing they could have done. They bring in Miles Turner, pay him like $26, $27 million a year. He has one of his worst years of his career. And they got some development for sure from Ryan Rollins, and but Henderson couldn't stay healthy. Not Henderson. Sorry. Why am I saying that? Kevin Porter Jr. You know why I said that? Because Doc Rivers always calls him Scoot for whatever reason, and Scoot Henderson was in my mind. But it's Kevin Porter Jr. Like, if he wasn't healthy, they weren't going to be good, and so that was part of the problem. Then Giannis was hurt for the majority of the season too. So I don't know. It just feels like when you look at what Gary Trent went through last year with lesser talent, it was like kind of got buried on the bench, and Doc's not a great coach, in my opinion, like not a great X's and O's kind of guy. Like, it's more, I can coach veterans, go out there and win, let's go. Like that's kind of where he's at, where I think Rick and the coaching staff for the Pacers would find ways to maximize what Gary Trent Jr. can do. And so he's unbelievable. But in the playoff series against the Pacers, he shot 50% on 44 attempts from 3. So that to me is a good volume, especially in a 5-game stretch. And this is a player that can really give the Pacers a little bit of life off the bench. I might actually lean more Tim Hardaway Jr. than Gary Trent Jr., but the junior battle is pretty fun. Now, at number 2, this is the guy that you guys see on the thumbnail here, the guy that I put as kind of like the topic or the cover for this topic. It's Chris Middleton. And we're going back to another Milwaukee Buck. He's a wing. He's an unrestricted free agent. And I should have said Gary Trent Jr. is a player option and Tim Hardaway Jr. is unrestricted. So sorry about that. But for Chris Middleton, unrestricted free agent, Last season, he actually played in more games than I think people realize, but he played 22.8 minutes per game last year, 10.2 points, 3.7 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 42% from the field, not great, 36% from three, that's pretty average, 87.5% from the free throw line. He's coming off a $31 million contract. I'm a little bit concerned about his injury history. That is my one red flag. It's like, we don't need injury-prone players on this team, but I do like the idea of having a proven veteran that is going to be all about the win now, right? Because he is somebody, like, when he is healthy and out there doing his thing, like, he's a bucket. And I mean, think about the problems that he gave the Pacers in the Pacers' first playoff series with Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, Middleton hit tough shot after tough shot after tough shot and was the only reason the Bucks made it a 6-game series. I mean, Dame was pretty good in game 1, but I mean, Middleton just kind of carried that load there, and it was like every time there'd be an isolation, then you just knew Middleton was going to get the ball in the basket. But what I like too is Chris Middleton has a previous relationship with Aaron Nesmith, and it's been Aaron Nesmith's mentor. So I think just having that connection, like, you already know, like, Chris is not a problematic kind of player. He's going to come in, be a vet, do what he's supposed to do, and I think the Pacers are going to be very careful with minutes, of course, because they know exactly the wear and tear that can be put on a player and cause them to re-injure stuff or, just potentially get injured. Like, the risk of injury can get higher. And with Tyrese's Achilles and Isaiah Jackson's Achilles and James Wiseman's Achilles, like, a lot of those are fluke injuries, but you got Nesmith with his crazy injury last year, Toppin with the foot, and Nembhard got hurt, and McConnell with the hamstring. Like, there's just so many injuries that are lined up last year that you just want to make sure you're very cognizant of what your, minutes are for your players. And so that's why I think with Middleton, he'd be fine here as a bit of a mentor. But this is a guy that I think could kind of carry some of that second unit scoring. I think him and Siakam would work really well together in pick and roll situations, or just being a floor spacing big or floor spacing wing that can knock down some open threes on some catch and shoots. He is a mid-range player, and we know Rick Carlisle has called the mid-range gel since Chris Duarte was drafted. I don't know, they still don't love the mid-range, but hey, if the mid-range is working and it's the playoffs, I think it's nice to just have versatility. But here at number 1, I'm going with somebody that I think is extremely under the radar, and he's got a player option. I would not be surprised if he turns it down. He had a great year with the Toronto Raptors, and he averaged 11.2 points per game, 4.9 rebounds, 1.9 assists, 52.3% from the field, 38.9% from three, and he shot 74.7% from the free throw line in 21.9 minutes. He's got a very difficult last name to say. I'm not even going to really try to say it, but I guess for fun I can. It's Memu Kelishvili. I can't say it. It's literally incredibly hard to say, but he goes by the first 4 letters of his last name. It's Mamu, and he actually was a draft pick by the Indiana Pacers that they traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. And one thing I love about him is this is literally a 6'9", small ball 5, can play the 4, can play the 5, and I just think he would be a perfect plug-and-play player with this Pacers team. If they want to go extremely small, they can play him and Toppin together, and the offense would be blazing hot, okay? This guy can shoot the ball. He's a lefty. He can shoot the ball. He can put the ball on the floor. He's got a great floater. He rebounds like crazy. He's got such a high motor on the defensive side of things. He plays bigger than his size. He plays like a guard in a big man's body. That is how I kind of see his game, and I don't really know how much he's going to make. It's really funny because we're doing these exercises here for Sports Illustrated, and for the Orlando Magic's Sports Illustrated website, they included Mamu in one of their top 3 free agents the Magic should go after. So if somebody else is already thinking about him, that means other teams are going to be thinking about him, and that means it could become a bidding war for Mamu. And I just think that with how the Pacers love to play, it's very important to go out there and get some center depth and some center versatility. When you look at the wing position, right, like 2, 3, 4, a lot of that's interchangeable. But when you're looking at styles of play, the 1 and the 5 are probably the most versatile, and that's where you want to have the most versatility. So if you were to tell me that the Pacers would enter with their center/front court room of Ivica Zubac, Mamu, Obi Toppin, and one of Jay Huff or Micah Potter, like, there's a lot of versatility there. You got a bruiser, a bone-crushing screen setter, and Zubac. You've got Toppin, who's like the high flyer that's going to be, he's going to shoot threes, but he can jump out of the gym. And then you got Mamu, who can put the ball on the floor. He can shoot threes as well. He's ambidextrous. He's a good passer. I mean, he'll cut. I mean, if you go watch any of his film on YouTube, watch how he cuts without the basketball when he's not involved in the play, and whether he shoots or gets a great quick pass out to somebody, like, that is Pacers random basketball more than anything. So I'm the biggest fan of him. I know that there's other names that are more popular here with Chris Middleton and things like that. Chris Middleton, Tim Hardaway Jr., Gary Trent Jr., Aaron Holiday. But the name that stands out to me is a short. It's a nickname. It's Mamu, and I'm just a massive fan. So Pacer Nation, that is my list. It's very important that the Pacers continue to add, I think, around the edges. I'm not entirely sold on the roster as currently constructed as being enough, and I think the front office, with the comments I read earlier from from Buchanan, I think that they understand as well how important it is to maximize this 2-year window and to take some risk, potentially financially, which we haven't really seen them do. So that's the 5 players, and I know I teased at the end of last episode that I was going to be talking about somebody that would run through a brick wall for Tyrese Halliburton, and that was LeBron James. So just for a little fun here, we'll throw like a bonus one because I think Pacer Nation has been really talking about LeBron James to the Pacers, and you've got this portion of the fan base that is absolutely anti-LeBron, 1,000%, want nothing to do with LeBron, hate LeBron James, would absolutely loathe the fact that he'd be in a Pacer uniform. They couldn't stand it, and I think that fan base is, okay, they're hurt. I think there's another fan base that is completely delusional and thinks that this could actually happen. I'm not saying there's no chance of it happening, but there's literally like no chance of this happening. I don't see a world where LeBron James takes a veteran minimum, leaves the Los Angeles Lakers, and comes to the Indiana Pacers. I just don't see it. I think he would join the Spurs before he joined the Pacers. I think he would go back home to Cleveland. I think that he would probably maybe look at going to Golden State. There was rumors before that he might want to go to Dallas, but I don't think he would want to go there. Now, I definitely don't think he's going to Washington to play with Anthony Davis, but that would be interesting. He's clearly got game, though. He's still got game left. And if for some reason he was like, I want to play with Halliburton, that's an interesting conversation. I mean, this is a guy that he kind of needs the ball in his hands to be the best version of himself. He's much, much slower defensively. He's not the catch and shoot shooter like Aaron Nesmith. And I just think there's a lot of unique ways that he would actually fit in with this team, but also like make it kind of awkward. So I'm not like seriously talking about this. I'm just talking about this for fun. I'm gonna bite at the apple and just have a little fun conversation. I wrote an article about it probably 2 months ago when somebody said for LeBron's retirement tour he should just play a home game for every team. And it was a Bill Simmons podcast. I think it was like a fan suggestion. And I thought it was great just to kind of envision LeBron for just one game with the Pacers and like, what would it be like for a year? But I think that, hey, if they're in championship mode right now and he came here, it wouldn't surprise me if they won a championship with him on the roster, if he were to join this group as currently constructed and kind of took that backseat role. So I personally don't see it happening. It's just like, come on, guys. But it's fun. It's fun to speculate, and it's fun to think about, wow, could we get LeBron James on the Pacers? Would he want to come here? It's not that far from Cleveland. It's only about a 5-hour drive, so it's not the end of the world. But I could I could have some fun with that if LeBron were to come to the Pacers. But with that being said, Pacer Nation, I appreciate you all letting me ramble. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Fachi will be back tomorrow. I am not sure what we're talking about yet. So we'll definitely have some content, though, coming your way. And thank you all so much for your support. Hope you all have a great rest of your Thursday. And let's go, Pacers.